Welcome back to the Adventure Athletes podcast, world's #1 podcast for adventure athletes, celebrating those going through virtuous struggles in order to benefit the world around them. In this week's episode, I sit down with Nathan Hutton, who just over a week ago won the WildHorse 200-mile foot race. So he ran 200 miles and won the whole event, and this was his first ever 200-mile race as well. So this was an incredible podcast for me to do, which is why I'm releasing 2 podcasts this week, because I couldn't let this go unnoticed. Now, in this episode, we talk about his background into running, how he got into it, and how he's still fairly new to the trail community as well. We talk about how he's recovering from his 200-mile race, everything that he's doing to help his recovery, and how it's going. Why the South Wales trail community is so special and what it's bringing about for the whole running community in Wales in general. How 100 miles is similar to a marathon, and how you can push yourself mentally, and whether you need to be able to do that in your daily life in order to complete challenges like this. Now, in each episode, I like to give a shout out to someone on Instagram or online, or even that I've met, that is doing something incredible that's inspired me. And this week's shout out is going to go to none other than previous podcast guest Reese Jenkins, who organised this race and all of the Pegasus events, and just the amazing things that he's doing for the South Wales running community. Massive shout out to Reese. If you haven't already, go and check out his podcast, because he is absolutely phenomenal. Some of the things that he has done is just mind blowing, so 100% go and check him out. At the end of each episode, the guest also sets a weekly challenge for you guys, the listeners, to go and take part in and be a part of the adventure athlete community. And as part of that community, I have just started up a WhatsApp group, which I'm including the link in the description below, so you guys can join the WhatsApp community, get a feel for what it's like being an adventure athlete. There's loads of subgroups going on, from running club to personal training to just a community chat where you can just talk with other like-minded people. So make sure you're joining that WhatsApp community as well. And then, as well as that, I am still doing my tyre flip marathon in less than 12 weeks now. It's getting awfully close to the time where I'm going to be spending a couple of days flipping a tyre until I've reached the distance of a marathon. If you want to support me doing that, check out the donation link below. I'm fundraising for BigMoose. They're doing these fantastic things. They've honestly saved so many people's lives. And if you want to support them and support me, please donate to my fundraiser. But for now, enjoy the podcast. What do you think your call to adventure is then? What was that one moment for you?
So I think for me, the probably call. So I went through not a particularly great kind of moment in life. Was married. That kind of took a bit of a downward spiral. I was running. During that period, bit of kind of road. I'd done a couple of years road running, couple of half marathons. But I think that kind of separation happened, and all of a sudden I had all this time on my hands, and I tried my first. I kind of tried the first. Tried my first ultra, the Brecon of Cardiff, run, walk, crawl, and then and I think the timing of that, the kind of separation piece, having all this time, I then just invested it in trail running, and literally became my life outside work. Literally my life outside work. And then I think, when you have all this time, you've got to put the time and energy somewhere, right? Otherwise, you just fucking sit around moping. And that for me was right. Let's give this a shot. Let's give it a crack. Let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah. So, what is your experience in running then? Because you said you did some road running before, and then you just decided to sign up for an ultra, and now you've gone from that to winning a 200-mile race. So we'll talk us through that journey of like how you got into running and how it's developed across your career almost.
So probably, I guess, common for a lot of trail runners, whether it's triathlons or road running, was my entry point. ironically, it was actually my ex-father-in-law that got me into running. He used to go out for sort of 5, 7, kind of 8K runs, and at the time, that time in my life, I didn't have anything. Yeah. I'd be binge watching TV for hours, and looking back on that, it horrifies me now to think that's how I used my time. But yeah, so I got into a bit of running, and then I got given a half marathon place under someone else, and thought, okay, I've got a few months, let's give this a shot. Kind of trained pretty well for that, and then yeah, enjoyed it, loved it, and then went back and did a few more, and I probably did some road running for, would have been 2.5 years, maybe even 3 years, because I did 3 marathons, and then got to around that 3-hour marathon mark and was done. It was so exhausting. It was so tiring, not just physically, but the kind of anxiety of going into a road race, knowing that it's all about chasing a PB, right? Because if you're not achieving a PB, then well, what's the point? And then what is all that worth? So that was part of it, and then the ultra kind of came around, and I tried to remember. I'm not sure whether it was a friend or whether it was kind of, I just seen lots of kind of stuff online around a lot of the local races, particularly Run Walk Crawl at the time. Signed up to the Brecon to Cardiff Run Walk Crawl Ultra, which is about 44 miles at the time. Didn't give it the respect it deserved. Went in with the classic roadrunner ego of, well, this will be fine. I did train, but I absolutely didn't kind of train in the way that I respected what I was going into, and that absolutely it spat me out. It was one of the hardest things I ever did. But at the same time, it was just incredible. I mean, just the fact that you can go out there and do these distances. And everyone is, I mean, the community itself is just incredible, right? So for me, it was, okay, let's go. That was fine, we finished it, but let's go and see what we can do. I mean, I instantly was like, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do. And then, so I went back to that. But in between that, I found Pegasus. I ran the Vorgum. Again, really, really tough out in the first time round, but just loved that stretch of Coast Pass. Loved the whole Pegasus vibe, feel. Very much like a kind of, you feel that family piece, right? What Keris and what Reese have built, and it's special in my opinion. And then it was during COVID that I found the Dragon 100. 4 weeks before, thinking you can, you've run 40s, you've run a 50. How hard can a 100-mile race be, right? Like, how hard can it be? Turns out it was really hard. I had my first DNF, so got about 67 miles and 68 miles in Ogmore Way, and was just by that point absolutely exhausted, chasing checkpoint times, and in no shape to carry on. And that was, and I've said this before, and it's absolutely true. That genuinely, that DNF at the time, it wasn't the best thing that happened to me. It was absolutely crushing, but at the same time, it absolutely was the best thing that happened to me, because it made me one, think about what I wanted to do and what I want to get from this. Secondly, to refocus on doing this properly, right? Because you can wing some of these things if you're a decent runner and you put some miles in. You can finish these races, not necessarily in good condition, but you can finish them. But it helped me refocus and helped me get hungry to going back after it. And and then went back the year after. Finished it. It was awful. It was awful. It was hard. I think it was the year when we had like record temperatures. So it was like 30 degrees, and it was, just horrendous. But finishing it was incredible, and that kind of spurred me on to getting a bit more taste for that 100-mile distance. And again, I've only done a couple of them, but there's something about that 100-mile distance that I don't know. It pulls you in, because I think once you get a taste for ultra racing, trail racing, right? I think there are so many of those kind of distances, the 30, 40-mile distances, and once you get to a point where you've done a few of them, and it's all relative, so you're really happy with your time and your placement, whatever that might be, you don't necessarily find as many of those dark places. OTT is the exception because the weather was horrendous, and there was an awful lot of dark places during that. I think the 100 is just a completely different ball game. I mean, not just the physical element, but that you could be by yourself for an awful long time. Sometimes all the race. If you're out in front or whatever that might look like, or there's gaps, those gaps can be massive, and that's a testing moment, particularly when they're in areas where they're very remote. Say for instance you're in the Dragon 100 and you're in the Avon Forest. I remember being in there and not a head torch in sight. So you're on your own in the middle of the night, middle of nowhere, and you are going through the motions now. Whether you've done it before or not, it's still there, and it's a challenge to get through. You are praying that sun comes up soon to give you that morning kick, because it's hard. It's that mental test for me that is it's so big in 100-mile races and beyond, because you're on your own. It's that time in your head, I think, is probably the thing I would say, and all those thoughts go through your head of can you do this? Moments in life where maybe you've given up before because your mind has told you that you can't do it, or you're not good enough, or all of those things, because we all get them, right? It's giving yourself a kick to go, I can do this, I've trained for this, and the reward is going to be crossing that line with a very small number, in the grand scheme of it, a very small number of people do these things, and that, for me, that's the reward.
I feel like the 100-mile distance now is almost a rite of passage for ultra runners, and it's almost become, and this is probably just me that thinks this, but it's almost become like a marathon. Like what a marathon used to be. You look like 20 years ago, the amount of people that were doing marathons was tiny, and now it's like everyone is doing a marathon, whereas now 100-mile is like the go-to distance goal, especially for trail runners. And then it's like, oh well, a 50-miler is the equivalent of a half marathon then, and like a 30-miler is the equivalent of like a 10k. That's what goes in my head.
When you say it like that, it's crazy to think about. I think, it is amazing how quickly. It is amazing how quickly your mind is focused on wanting to do one of those 100-mile races. For me, it didn't take long. Yeah. I was lucky that I'd done lots of road racing, and I could commit whatever time I wanted to running. I had all the time, so I committed all the time to it. So, time started to get okay, and I was like, I'm all right at this. And then I think you're either looking at those races going, they're races, and you're gonna give them a go. You are chasing, you're chasing a time, and inevitably you're looking at podium spots. But then you go and hang on, let's give ourselves a real challenge, and let's see what this 100-mile kind of event is all about. And I try not to call them races. I try and call them events, because I think for a lot of people, I think calling 100 mile, it might well be a race for you individually for time, but I think, and maybe the pros and the elites in the world who are chasing those front times, but I think for a lot of us it's just it's surviving and finishing, because anything can happen over that distance. There's absolutely no, and I think that's the big thing, right? There are for the majority, there's a guarantee that you finish when you're 30-40 milers. The times are pretty good. The cut-off times are pretty generous. You can make it, right? You can crawl in if you need to. There's very different. There's no guarantees on a 100 mile race. And I think that's probably where that then challenge comes up. You're right, 20 years ago, marathon was like the be-all end-all, right? And now it's like, wow, we just do them. And I think, the 100 miles are starting to get far more popular.
Yeah. It's something, I'm probably one of the unusual people that didn't have a road running background.
Right.
But in my head, like, it came from, I watched the Barkley on Netflix.
Oh, God, okay.
And there was something in that just drew me in. And I'd done like a bit of running. I wasn't really a runner. But then I was like, I'm joining the fire service. Like, I've just watched this running documentary. I want to be that mentally strong person that can get through an event like that. And my head just went straight to, I'm going to run an ultra. So I signed up for an ultra. I didn't end up training for it, but The first event I signed up for was an ultra. And then I was sat back, and that was the OTT one in 2019.
Right.
And I signed up on my birthday, which is New Year's Eve. So I signed up New Year's Eve the year before. And then I was like, maybe I should do some events in the build-up. So I signed up to like a 5K. I did a 5K in like the February, and then I didn't do anything. And then I was like, I'd signed up for the Cardiff Half as well, and I completely forgot I'd signed up for all these races, to be honest. I just, it's one of those things where it's like, New Year, I'm going to sign up for things, I'm going to train, Classic. I promise, I'm going to do it. And then you just don't, and you just carry on with life. But it came up to the Cardiff Half, and I always tell the story of, I was on my firefighting course, my 2-week firefighting course, the initial thing, they're just beasting you. And I told the guys, like, I've signed up for the Cardiff Half, but I don't think I'm going to go because I'm so tired from this course. They're like, oh no, we're all signed up, we'll just do it with you, we'll do like a nice easy run, and like, just come down, it'll be a laugh. And I turn up, and I was the only one that turned up. And I was just like, I messaged them all with a photo of me in my pen being like, where are you guys? And then they're like, oh yeah, we're not coming, we are wrecked. And I was like, could someone not have told me this beforehand? But then I was like, I'm just going to do it. Like, I'm fairly fit because I've been doing this firefighting stuff. And I did a 1:45, and I was like, that's
brilliant.
That's pretty good for someone that doesn't run.
I'd say that's very good.
And then I was like, I know I've got this ultra coming up, but I was like, I'd signed up for a marathon in between as well, and I was like, no, it got closer to the marathon. I was like, I'm just not going to turn up, and I was like, I'm going to do the same with the ultra. But then the night before the ultra, I was just like, I've got to go. Like, it's in my head. The night before I decided, like, I'm actually going to go and do this thing. I'm going to get up early, go to Merthyr, and I'll do the OTT. And I just rocked up, and like you said, like, you can kind of turn up to these things and finish, no matter what state you're in. I was within 1 minute of the cut-off time because I tore my hip flexor on mile 6.
Oh my goodness.
But I just dragged myself through that race, and to me, after watching the Barkley, I was like, that's what an ultra is. You're just in pain, you're suffering, and that's what I expected. But now that I do this podcast, I meet people like you that are doing 200 miles. Like, there are ultras out there that aren't just a sufferfest. You can just run them and enjoy them. And I think I'm trying to find that now. There are.
Yeah, there are. There are a collection of races that you can go and enjoy. Training is key. I think like, you can make them as you can make them as comfortable, as uncomfortable as you, as you want, right? In the sense that and it's all relative. Wherever you're at in terms of what your plan is and what you want to achieve from these races, there is going to be moments where like your mind is screaming at you to say like this is too much, and that can happen on 35 mile races, and it can absolutely happen on 200 mile races. And there are the difference with the difference with 100 and then the 200 mile races is that that's more frequent, and you get more of them, which is the battle, which is the absolute battle to finish. But again, that's why the DNF rate is high for a reason, because they are so hard. And that's not just the 200. That is for the 100 as well. The DNF rates are so high. Typically, they're 30-40% of the field don't make it, because they are so hard. There's obviously various reasons for that. Could well be a lot of them are like yourself, where people where they've life happens. They haven't been able to commit to all the training, but they want to give it a shot. Sometimes injuries happen. But there's also sometimes where a collection of things go wrong. You don't hydrate properly. You don't look after your nutrition. You don't look after your salts if you're running in the summer. That can absolutely wreck your body. Something I've never ever done well. But yeah, that's why these things are so tough, and they are not guaranteed because they're so long. You're out there for so long.
Do you think you have to have a certain sort of mindset to even think about taking part in these like 100 mile, 200 mile events? And what does that look like to you?
I think that you have to. I think you have to accept that at some point, various points, you're going to have some really down moments, and it's strange actually because I deal with those. I deal with those far better in a race than I do doing normal life stuff. People always say to me in work that they think that, you must be incredibly mentally strong. I'm like, only in a race. Only, I think, I guess, yeah, I think you have to, whether it's mentally strong or not, I think you have to absolutely know that and accept that you're going to have some really down moments, whether that's emotional, whether you actually get emotional, or whether you just have those moments of you are so tired, your body is so tired, your pace is really slowed, you're walking actually, and you are really questioning whether you can do this. Typically for 100 that's 70 miles in, because usually your physical training is taking you that far. I always say this, again, I'm not that experienced, I've only done a few, but it's that 70 mile mark that you get to, and it's the physical training that's taking you that far. After that, it's your head, and you need to make sure that you are ready for it and absolutely persevere. And typically it's your body telling you need something that you haven't had. So whether that's that you haven't hydrated very well, and more often than not it's you haven't eaten very well. You're exhausted, you're tired, you've got no energy. You probably burnt 15,000 calories and you've consumed 1,000 or 2,000. It's not enough. And again, I am terrible at this, but that's usually the moment where you just need to take a breath, walk if you need to, walk a couple of miles to refocus, right? Eat something, refocus, put your headphones on, put a distraction on, and you will feel it again. It just takes time. And again, the same rule applies for longer races into the WildHorse. I was lucky in WildHorse because I had a team who were absolutely phenomenal. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that that time and finish would not have happened if it wasn't for having that team. There's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can 100% say that. They were phenomenal.
So, what made you jump from that 100 to 200 mile distance then? What made you be like, you know what, I've done this incredibly hard thing. I've done it a few times now. I'm now going to double it.
I mean, I didn't think about it like that. I don't know. I think it's interesting because there are so many. There's the common one that pops up right is Dragon's Back, isn't it? It's the big word. It's got the big name on it, and that's the one that people always kind of swirl around. The moment it's really interesting with races. I get drawn into typically I get drawn into one. I see one pop up and I want it, and that was WildHorse. The moment I saw that, the moment that Reese launched it, I wanted it. I wanted to have a go at it. And I think the challenge for me wasn't it was the 200 miles, but it was more so the continuous clock ticking. That was the one that grabbed me, and I don't know why, but I absolutely, with Dragon's Back, this stage event, you get your time per day. Don't get me wrong, very hard, but you get it's a multi-day event, right, with overnight stops. It never just pulled me in the way that WildHorse did. WildHorse pulled me in because I was like, this just sounds mental, and I wanted a challenge to see how my body would react, and how I would react with that ticking clock.
Yeah.
And it was way harder than I thought it would be.
There seems to be a bit of a common theme with you. Is just like, oh yeah, like I wanna try this thing. I think it's doable, and then it just happens to be like way harder than you think. I think you've got a tendency to underestimate these events.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, and you're definitely not the first person. You're definitely not the first person to tell me that. I think the difference with WildHorse then going into my first 100 is I'd had that DNF at the Dragon 100 a couple of years back, and the behind the scenes stuff, the training, the miles, the miles and the gym sessions at PA Fitness, and with the team there, and the group that I train with, called the 7 p.m. specials, because we're the only group that trains at 7 p.m. And I don't think we're suited to the other classes. We're not necessarily the most well behaved, but they're an amazing bunch. And I think again those miles with that strength training. I was confident, right? Physically, I'd done the work. It was a bit of a, it was an 8-month block of training, some serious miles, big back-to-back weekends, lots of elevation. Did all of that apart right. The gym sessions in between that certainly made a massive difference. Probably can't put into words how much of a difference the strength training has made over the last couple of years. So I kind of felt going into it physically, I felt really, really good. The bits I absolutely underestimated were how I would feel on lack of sleep, and what that would do to me, and also having no real nutritional plan going into it. So yeah, those are two things that were really, really hard, and I had to fix in the race, which wasn't ideal. You're having to think about these things and fix them when you're in the race, but at the same time, you're always going to learn something, right? You're always going to take something away. It's such a massive event. There's so much things to think about. There's so much to think about and process that, again, having the team, having the crew that I had, a lot of that was sorted for me. which kind of I feel stupid in a way, but the only thing I had to do was run. I know that sounds crazy like that, but when you take a lot of those other little bits out of it, when you've got, you know, can I mention the team?
Yeah.
So I had an amazing team. So I had four pacers, 4 buddy runners, Tommy Mack, Dan Rees, Nathan Hutton, Sean Styles, and I had Danny, who was my crew in the car. Some of those runners did 2 checkpoints each, 40-mile stints, 12, 13 hours out there with me. And then, you know, the work that Danny did as far as the crew, I didn't have to worry about anything when I got to the car. It was replacement bottles, what food you need, what snacks you need, do you need to sleep? And I benefit, you know, the way that I benefited from that is that he'd done work on the route, essentially set waypoints into the route where I knew he was going to be. So I could push the boundaries with sleep a lot more than I would have done. You know, it would have been a completely different strategy if I had to rely on checkpoints, because they're so far apart. Some of them are 20, 25 miles apart. That's a huge distance between them. A whole day could be. So, you know, I was able to push those sleep boundaries because I knew that within 5 miles, if I needed, you know, if I got there and I was exhausted, I could get my head down. And I think at one stage I had 2 sleeps within 4 miles because I was so tired. And that was the second night. You know, by that point you've been going 40 odd hours. So, you know, that strategy, that was always the strategy going in, that I was going to have 20-minute sleeps, no more. And that came from people I'd spoken to, Stu Aubrey, who I'd had a couple of conversations with around strategy, and so 20-minute naps was the strategy. I just didn't know how many of those and how often I was going to need them. But it was still exhausting. I mean, at one stage, the second day, I was doing a Natalie Hutton, who phenomenal runner. She pointed out to Reese at one of the checkpoints that I was basically closing my eyes on those last few miles. So that was a kick to get a nap, because you don't realise it. You don't realise how tired you are.
No.
You just want to keep going, and actually you're just, you know, you're costing yourself because you're moving so slowly that, yeah, getting your head down for 20 minutes makes a world of difference.
I can't imagine what it's like to run that far. It's just making sure, like you're saying, there's so many little pieces you have to get right. You have to get your sleep, your nutrition, your training. Everything has to be so good on the day.
Yeah.
Did you sort of go into the event with any idea that you was going to win? Like, was you going in with that attitude, or was it just like, I'm just going to turn up and run?
So I definitely didn't go in chasing a win. I've never gone into a race. I've never gone into any races chasing a placement. I'm going to correct myself, because I have in my early days, and I paid for that because you have no idea who you're racing, right? There are so many incredible runners out there. They could come from anywhere, turn up to a race and just blow your mind. So, I learned a long time ago not to go in to chase a placement. Time was key for me. So a friend a couple of years ago actually talked to me about the kind of gold, silver, bronze strategy. And for the last couple of years, for the last year, that's been my strategy. So I set myself 3 goals for WildHorse. Gold was chasing as close to course record as I could. All based on, I mean, for gold, everything's got to go perfect, right? Everything's got to go well. And that was based on just the training gone really well. I'd come off the back of a long stint feeling great. So gold was to work as close to that as I could. But silver was really where I thought I would sit, which was the 64, 65 hour mark. And then the bronze really was under 3 days. I didn't want to go over 72 hours. If I felt, for me, based on the training I'd done, I'd have probably been disappointed if based on the work and the commitment I'd given to it, I feel like I'd have been disappointed coming out of that. Turns out it went way better than I thought it would go, and surprisingly, my body reacted really, really well. I mean, the strategy itself was, with Dan, Natalie, and Sean, over those 120 miles, was to really run the flats and the downhills and walk where we needed to climb. That was the plan. I wasn't going to go into it and waste energy trying to go up inclines that maybe I would typically run over a shorter distance. So the plan was to stick to that, and that definitely paid off later in the race, because actually, it's crazy to think, but I was still able to run well in the high 180s. I even surprised myself that I felt better in those later miles. One would have been adrenaline, because I could see Rossilly in the distance. Secondly, you went to the Gower Coast Path, which I know very well, so there's a lot of runnable sections. But thirdly, because we'd with the team stuck to that plan, where I hadn't necessarily wasted an awful lot of energy on sections that I didn't need to run, it helped later in the race.
Yeah. How does like training look for a 200 miler? Because again, like, this is complete alien concept to me, being able to run that far, and I just, like, I've got an idea of how I would plan it in my head as a coach, but I have no idea, because I've not done that. I've not trained anyone to that level. So, like, what does it actually look like in practice?
So for me, I mean, the plan, it sounds kind of basic, but the plan was Monday to Friday, keep the miles very easy. So keep the miles very easy in terms of like pace, but to probably get up to around 25-30 miles between Monday and Friday, 6-7 miles a day, 2 gym sessions then Monday and Wednesday nights. Those were kind of commitments, and then big volume on the weekend. So big back-to-back runs. So 25, 26, 28 miles Friday, Saturday, the same on Sunday, with big elevation in the mountains, in the hills, and that was every week for probably 6-7 months.
Yeah.
I wanted to hit around that average of around 80-85 miles a week. Now some people go higher volume, some people go lower volume. That pinch point has got to work for you, and you've got to, based on maybe how you feel when you wake up Monday morning, you can shuffle your week around. But that was the conditioning that I needed to do to go down and be able to, hope my body would hold up over 200 miles. I mean, it was the same for me. I mean, I'd done 100 miles, but how on earth do you even know that you can go? You don't go and do a 100-mile training run, do you, or a 150-mile training run? And that's where I got advice. So I've never had a coach in terms of making a plan, because I'm pretty stubborn. I don't want to go and do hill sprints. I don't want to go and do intervals. I don't want to be. So I don't like being told what day I should run and what miles. I kind of wake up and go, right, I'm gonna go and do this. But what really helped was I had a couple of conversations with Stuart Aubrey on what he did, preparation for WildHorse, and to use some of that. And again, it was thinking about lowering the pace, being on my feet for longer. This time on feet thing keeps popping up, right? I mean, it's legit, it's real. It's, swap a run out for a walk if you want to. Go for a walk for 4 hours, because there are sections of that WildHorse you are going to be walking. So you need to be able to get in your head as a runner that you are going to have to walk, because We're not your Courtney Dauwalters of the world. We're not your Killian Jornets of the world. We're amateur. You cannot run 200 miles from start to finish without walking. So that was a strategy that I had to get right in my head and fix, because that's not something that I'd been used to. But that massively helped.
Yeah. Did your training vary much between training for 100 and training for a 200 then? Was it just an increase in volume, or was it pretty similar?
It was actually pretty similar, and less miles, believe it or not. And I admit I'd overtrained for a couple of the dragon races. Certainly for the as much as I refocused and got it right, I did definitely overtrain for my redemption race on the Dragon 100, and then definitely overtrained the year after again going into it. I actually reduced my weekly miles by probably 10 miles, maybe 10 miles, but for longer. So whereas that training block for the Dragon 100 is probably focused on 4 or 5 months of intense training before it. Lots of running, because I do that anyway, so it's kind of like I'm always in training, but where the focus was intense for 4 or 5 months before, for WildHorse it was reduced but over a longer period of time, so I was conditioned for a longer period, and my body felt better for it. I think once you get to, you see people sort of, and it works for some people, but you see sort of that 9,500 miles a week every week. I've done it and it's hard. I'm not sure that I get any benefit from it. I think having that pinch, people talk about this pinch point. For me, between 75 and 85 miles a week is my pinch point, because it allows me to feel okay. It allows me to, also work, do my working week. Otherwise you're just exhausted, right? Because you train all the time, and also fit those 2 key gym sessions, and so that worked really well for me. And when I go back at it next year, that would be the plan, is to stick with that, fix all the little things that I got wrong, although I could do better as a team and as a crew as well. But the training, I don't think I would change anything about the physical training.
Yeah. And what does your sort of strength sessions at PA look like then?
They're programmed in. Basically, we do whatever's on the board. Essentially, I don't go in and do free weights. That's not me. I need to be in A class. Otherwise, I won't do it. I'm not the most comfortable in the gym. But a shout out to PA Fitness, to be fair, because genuinely feel at home there. It's such an amazing environment, and the group that I train with there, I tried to go a couple of times and I wussied out and didn't. I just getting really uncomfortable in that gym environment, if I'm honest with you. It's not something that I've ever done, but I knew it was kind of key if I wanted to be better. They're an awesome group, and they definitely helped me more comfortable, and they definitely pushed me to be stronger in the gym, which has helped. So the gyms, usually they're in 2 parts. There'll be it's a lot of CrossFit stuff. So the first half of the session will be, an 8-week program of whether it, or might be 6 weeks, but it'll be deadlifts or cleans or snatches, and then the second half of the session will be kind of AMRAP EMOM session, so a lot of lunges, kettlebells, your power aerobic stuff. Not necessarily a direct link to what I needed, but a combination of those things with that strength element. I certainly saw the benefits, especially on climbs.
Yeah, it's just that sort of general preparedness that you need as just an athlete in general. I think everyone can and will benefit from some form of strength training, and I think the way you've put it of like, I don't like going into the gym, it's intimidating, I don't like doing it, I need that class environment. It's finding what you like to do more than following the perfect program.
Yeah.
Because I could write you an incredible strength program and be
Sure.
like, look, here's
Yep.
this program, follow that.
Yep.
And you'd be like, well, yeah, that's going to be good for me, but I'm not going to do it because I don't like it.
Exactly. For me, you're 100% right. I think one of the things that I love about the classes that I go to at PA is we work hard. Yes, it's brutal, right? It's really tough. But it's the group that make it so much easier for me, because the other part for me is it's also a social aspect. When you're training for these events and doing these long distance runs, these training runs, it can be hard when you're on your own, especially if it's a big weekend of training. I'm lucky because there's a couple of I'm grateful there's a couple of people that I know get out and do some miles with. But it can be hard. But I'm benefiting twice from it, because one, I'm benefiting in going, and I am absolutely seeing the difference. It's crazy when I look back compared to where I was when I first went to the gym to where I am now in lifting, my technique, but also the group that I train with. They're absolutely mental crazy bunch, but also brilliant, because they hold you accountable.
Yeah.
If I miss a session or if I don't turn up for a session, I will hear about it, and then I need to make sure I go back to get another one in, and that's great for me, because, like I said, gym isn't necessarily my natural go-to, but it was huge in preparation for WildHorse.
Yeah. And you mentioned to me off air as well about one thing that you like about the ultra running, which seems to be the same thing you like about the gym, is the community.
Yeah.
Like, how is the ultra running community different from any other sort of like aspect that you've been in? Because I know you did a lot of road running before.
Yeah, I mean, not to give the road runners a hard time.
I feel like I do that a lot on this podcast.
Well, that gives
We've got a lot of trail runners, and I'm always like, so why is it better than road running?
gives me a free pass then. Look, I think I found, and even at my, wasn't necessarily competitive, but even at my kind of level of road running, it got really intense. The anxiety before races were for me through the roof. It's hugely competitive. I find there's a lot of, this is just my opinion, but I found there's an awful lot of arrogance around it. It's all about times. When you're in that pen, the conversation is, what time are you going for? What time? What was your time? None of that, and there's absolutely none of that in trail running, ultra running. Absolutely none. It's such an amazing environment to be around. People will have conversations with you about, or make a joke about what you want to do today. But generally, the answer is always, I absolutely want to survive, because it's so far, it's so long, and it's crazy in a way, because the friends I've made in the couple of years of trail running versus the couple of years I did in road running, not even on the same scale. I mean, there's people now that a lot of the team I've mentioned, Dan and Danny I've known forever, 20 years. It's crazy. We were talking, actually, we've been friends for 20 years, if not a bit more. The two Pembrokeshire boys, but Natalie and Sean, for instance, and Tommy Mack, I've known them like a couple of years, but we'll spend half our lives running together, and it's so different. I absolutely love it. I think the motivation. Yeah, you have your individual goals, which everyone has, but when you're around that registration, kit check, kind of pre-race and then post-race. It's incredible.
Yeah. And it's something that I've heard a lot about. It's just how great the community is.
Yeah.
I'm very much introverted, believe it or not. And when I've done the OTT, the both times I've done it, especially the first time, like I was just super anxious just being around that kit check environment. Like I didn't want to be there, didn't talk to anyone. I just sort of like hood up, zoned out.
Okay.
Because I don't like being in those environments. And then the second time I was a bit more at ease because one, I knew what to expect.
Yeah.
And two, I knew a couple of people. Like I'd known like John and Joni because I'd done it before.
Yeah.
And I'd been on a few of their social runs. So I met a few other people doing it.
Okay.
But I still didn't immerse myself in the community. I was just like, I'm here to race. Almost going in like a roadrunner would to a marathon.
Yeah.
I'm just here, I'm going to do my race and then I'm going to leave. Whereas now that I've started the podcast and I've met all these people and I'm like, just the community sounds amazing. And now I'm experiencing it because like I go running with Lee and Mike and like we just go out and we've got a group chat and we'll talk and we're always encouraging each other and we got each other on Strava and we're like congratulating each other all the time. And I feel like I'm part of that community even though I don't feel like I'm part of the community. Like I don't... People always give me grief for this. I don't consider myself an ultra runner yet.
Oh, here we go.
But it's because I'm more of like, I call myself like an adventure athlete, but I'm more on the challenge side. I'm the personal challenge. I'm going to flip a tyre for a marathon. No one else is doing that. Like I'm not doing it against other people. No one's turning up and it's not a race. There's not people that are going to be there. It's just me and the tyre. So that's what the mentality I went into my ultras with. But now I'm seeing it as more of like a social thing, and especially hearing about Pegasus and just how social it is, especially doing the slam and the community it's built. It's like, I'm experiencing that through the podcast, and it makes me want to get into it more. And I'm not sure if it's just something because we're in South Wales. It feels like it's a South Wales thing. And everyone knows everyone in South Wales in this ultra running community.
It's a small community. Right? South Wales is a small place, really. And I haven't got a ton of experience outside local racing. I've done a Centurion event, so I did the I'm in their massive. I did their Thames Path 100-mile race last year, which was an amazing experience because it was a race. Why I chose that race in particular was because it was unknown for me. Didn't know the route, didn't know Centurion. Who knows what can happen? Let's give it a go. But you get a vibe. It's a big event, but you don't get. I mean, everyone always asks me this. What's the deal with this? The hug that Reece gives everybody. The fact that everyone wants to give Reece a hug at the end of a race. You just want to. Because he's so immersed in it, he's so invested in it, and Reece will see every single person past that crossing that line to put that medal over their head. Every single person, unless something happens, he's got to be away. Fine, but other than that, he is there watching every single person pass. Not another volunteer, not someone else, the race director. That's the difference that you get, I think, with Pegasus, and you feel that. I mean, Finish WildHorse gives me an absolutely massive hug, and it's like, I'm so proud of you. It's like, that's crazy that you're saying this, and it's so personal, and he means it. And you cross the line at others. I'm lucky because I've raced a lot of run, walk, crawl, so I get the same kind of vibe from them because Joe, the race director. He's seen me sort of thereabouts in races, so getting the win at the Gower 50 for me last year was massive because I think he was as invested for me to get my first win with them. And again, I was so close at the Dragon 100, so I kind of got the same. But maybe not everyone gets that just because it's different. And Centurion across the line, you get your buckle handed to you, and that's kind of it, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that's just the difference with Pegasus, and you feel that throughout the race. And the other part of that, which I think is just absolutely incredible, is this non-cut-off time. It's mental to me. It blows my mind that, I mean, there's cut-offs for WildHorse and there's cut-offs for the Epona 100, but the fact he's built no cut-offs into their slam events is crazy. I mean, he'll be out there until the last person crosses the line, which is madness.
Don't they call everyone like a few weeks before the race as well?
A week
like
before.
Personally,
every single person. Yeah, he calls every single person. He does personally.
Yeah. Crazy
for every race. Just checking in. Not that you need anything, but just it's. I think but again though, I think you can see he's so in. You can see from him, and Keris, that they are so in. They're so in. And what they've built is special. I think it's special. I think they've made it so much more accessible for people, which strips away a lot of that anxiety around doing your first ultra marathon, where you may be worried about chasing a checkpoint time. You can worry about those races later, right? There are lots of other races you can do with cut-off times when you're ready. The fact that they have this set up is a reason why I think they are so popular, because again, it's so accessible.
Yeah. I've heard nothing but amazing things about Pegasus.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to do my first Pegasus event this
You'll love it.
You'll
love it.
It's round here. I can't complain. I've
Exactly.
done parts of the route and it's a phenomenal route.
Yeah. They got a collection of amazing routes. They've obviously got the Vorgum Saturday, which is the Vale of Glamorgan Ultra. I mean, it's looking like it's going to be absolutely stunning weather for it. 40 miles along the Vale of Glamorgan coast path, which I spend. Lee jokes actually because he calls me Mr. Vorgum, because I have spent half my life training on that route. But it's such a lovely stretch of coast path. They got some amazing events, and those numbers are growing. I mean, they're now getting a couple of hundred people at every event, and it's just amazing to see that that's grown so much for such a small, for essentially, a family business. And now with those slam events, the WildHorse, the Epona as part of that, they're building something special. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so exciting to see what they're doing and what everyone that I've met who's done their events are now doing. Like, you're testament to that. You've just done a 200 miler, and I can imagine there's more on the cards for you.
Yeah, there's more on the cards. This year is kind of fixed. So I've got the Centurion North Downs 100 in 8 weeks, which I'm really looking forward to. All I heard when I was running the Thames Path 100 last year was you should do the North Downs 100, you should do the North Downs 100. And other people have mentioned it. So that's fixed in for 8 weeks. That'll be a fun one, I think. It's first weekend of August. The weather will be warm, I imagine. The DNF rate was high last year because of the heat. So that'll be a fun one. Elevation's not terrible. It's not too tasty on that one, so let's see how that one goes. I'm really looking forward to. And then a few weeks later, I've got the Black Beacons 100, the Run Walk Crawl Black Beacons 100, which is absolutely disgusting. It's basically the same elevation as WildHorse over half the distance. It's an out and back 100. So 100 miles out, 100 miles back. 50 miles out, 50 miles back. With about 30,000 feet elevation. So that would be an absolutely different test. This year this year is, and then I'll probably go back to give OTT a second go in November and then finish this year as that. Next year, January, I have the North Challenger Spine, which is not the full spine, it's the baby version, but it's still 160 miles along the Pennine Way in January.
A baby version, 160
miles.
Well,
it's the baby version because the full version is like 268 miles. So it's called the baby version. I'm not quite sure how baby it is, but yeah. So I've got that in January, and I'll go back. I'll go back to WildHorse next year. Yeah.
That's quite a CV of races.
Well, I got to finish them first. Yeah, I think the two races this year, the 200-mile races this year, I suppose the way I look at it is I've obviously just done a huge chunk of training for WildHorse, so I'll take a couple of easy weeks. And then probably do 3 or 4 weeks of just getting some good miles in. So I'm picking up that pace a little bit, because it will obviously be, well, hopefully I'll be moving a bit quicker than I was for WildHorse on that North Downs 100, which I'm really looking forward to. And then the 100 in September, well, it sounds like it'll be a hike more than a run based on that elevation. So I feel like I've just got to manage it as best I can, really, and then start thinking about, because January will come around pretty quickly. So yeah, I'll just be getting my head sorted and ready for those. But I love it, and I think that my kind of thing is, while I'm probably sounds a bit cliche, but while I'm feeling good, while I've been training good, while I'm physically fit, and make the most of it. Because I know it sounds cheesy, but you just don't know.
Yeah.
Make the most of it and see what happens.
How's recovery been since the 200? Because that was this weekend just gone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've had 5 days recovery so far, but I've also seen that you was back in the gym. So
yes. Everyone has seen I've been back in the gym, and I've had messages. One of the girls messaged me who I know from kind of ultra running world. She also messaged, "Are you insane?" And I think that's probably a fair comment. That was probably a bit too soon. I'd gone out Wednesday morning and done a sort of easy 3 miles to see how my body would react. It felt okay. I was tired, but I felt okay. And then did that HIIT session in the evening. I've not done anything since. Recovery, if I'm honest, recovery has been okay. My legs felt okay. I think a lot of that had to do with that it was a lot slower pace than if I was attacking a race. So I don't know whether that was part of it. And I'm hoping that it's kind of at least says to me that the training went well and worked out, because I didn't feel, I was exhausted. I think the biggest thing, I was exhausted, absolutely sleep deprived and exhausted. So finished Friday late afternoon, very early evening. You'd assume that Friday night I would just crash out and have the best night's sleep ever. Computer says no on that one, and again the same for Saturday and probably the same for Sunday. I'm only just getting to the point where I'm starting to sleep a bit better, which is very strange. But generally the body felt okay. It was just again just very tired. But it's not been, the recovery actually hasn't been as bad as I thought. People were kind of saying that you're not going to want to run for 2 weeks, and I feel like I want to go again. And actually I'll be going again Saturday, because I'm out for a decent recce of the Epona with when Natalie was running her first 100-mile race, so I'll be out on Saturday getting some miles in with that. But I feel like I also want to, and I need to as well. If that means I need to take a bit more care of myself in the week and reduce those weekly miles, and I will. But I'll see how it goes.
Have you done anything in particular to help with your recovery at all, or is it literally just take it as easy as possible?
Yeah, just take it as easy as possible. I've tried to eat better. I think that, I ate absolute rubbish for 3 days during that race, and it's not great for you. It's a lot of snacky stuff, and also not eating a lot of good food either. So I've tried to eat better, which has been part of the recovery. And then just take it easy, not rush stuff, and try to remember that you've just run for like 2.5 days and 200 miles. So kind of just be kind to your body and not overdo it, I think, is the key. Because you can still feel it. You'll carry it for days, if not a couple of weeks. Just because I want to go out and start running, I've got to remember that my body's still carrying those miles.
Yeah. Something that you said again off air before we started, that's really kind of made me a bit hopeful, to be honest.
Right.
Is about like age, because for like an outsider looking in, you're what, like early mid 40s?
I am 41 this year in a few weeks.
So 41, you've been running ultras for 4 or 5 years. That's getting into it like quite late from an outsider's perspective. Like for me, I'm late 20s, and I'm even thinking like, how much more can my body cope with me just pushing it to its limit?
I'm very jealous when you're in your 20s.
And I always just look at it and I'm like, I don't know how long I can keep this up for. And then seeing people like you and that other guy that you mentioned who's in his 60s and just still out running ultras, and not just out there running them, you're doing 100, 200 milers and winning, is like, there's a lot of time left for me.
I'm hoping I've got a lot of time. You've got an awful lot of time. I think so. It's so different. So one thing I would say is my age is pretty common, and older. That's pretty common. You're gonna hate me saying this, and I mean no offense, but yet youngsters, people who are like in their late 20s, that's not it's not a theme that I see in races. And the category tends to be older than that, because for a lot of people they've crossed over from I'm not saying all, but a lot of people have crossed over from done some road running or triathlons or done some other adventure stuff. So yeah, and I was having and reason why I mentioned Mark. So Mark, I met during WildHorse. Mark, I remember his age, but it has to be mid-60s. Has done every WildHorse race, so clocked 1,000 miles of WildHorse, and has done, like I said, 5,500-mile races and 14 or 15 races over 200 miles. He's off to do a 640-kilometre race over the Swiss mountains later this year. So a couple of things that people always say to me. Most common is, oh yeah, you're 41. How much longer do you want to do this? I'm genuinely just getting started. I've never felt better. I've never felt better, and actually, I am getting better. In terms of how I feel going into races and how my training's going. I've got to look after myself, and I've got to remember when I'm training that I'm not 30 anymore, so that is part of it. But from an ultra running, from a trail running perspective, I think you need to flip that around, because it for me it feels very much on the other side of the age category. So yeah, that question of how long, in a sense, I'm just getting started. There's years of this to come, and I will do this for as long as I can, for as long as I can. Appreciate that things change as you get older, and you've got to do things, you've got to manage things differently. But I absolutely feel in the best condition that I've ever felt in. Particularly because I didn't really look after myself in my late 20s and early 30s. It's only been the last few years that doing this has, changed my whole view on conditioning and fitness and what that does to you, and the benefits as well.
Yeah.
So flip that, and you've got all the time in the world. By the time you're my age, you will have a huge list of accomplishments, whether it's in trail running or whether it's in a lot of the other adventure stuff you do.
Yeah. I think it's really good for people to hear that, because for me, I went through like an injury, it was 4 years ago now, where I snapped my ankle in half.
Right.
I couldn't walk for 6 months. And coming out of that and not being able to do the stuff I liked, I went from running an ultramarathon to not being able to walk a kilometre.
Right.
And coming out of that, I honestly, in my head, over the 2 years after that, I was just thinking, well, that's it for me then. Like, I can't do the things that I love doing anymore. And I just sort of gave up with it all. And I'm so glad that I switched that around and was like, I've still got time to turn this around. Like, I'm still in my 20s. But I know there's people even younger than me that have been through a big injury and they're like, I can't do the stuff I like now. And then people older than me that will feel like it's too late to get started, or I've gone through something and I can't see a way out of it back into fitness, like I'm too old. So to hear from like myself coming back from the injury and doing the mental stuff I do, and then hearing from you about winning a 200-mile race at 41, and then hearing about people in their 60s that are out running, how far was it, like 650 kilometres?
He's off to do like 640 kilometres over the Swiss mountains, yeah.
And it's just like, hearing that just gives me hope, and I hope it gives everyone listening hope that there's so much more that you can get yourself doing, no matter how late you think you've left it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the other common thing that I get, and I get it from people who are physically in really good condition, and it's I could never do that. I could never run 10 miles. I'm like, look, if you're in a position where you can run, where you can put one foot in front of the other, then you can. And I think, if you want to do it, do it. If you want to try it. Because, in one sense, what have you got to lose? And secondly, don't leave it too late where you wished you'd tried one, right? And I think being out on the trails, I say this to people, my Monday to Friday runs I generally find quite hard, because they're generally all road because of work and other commitments where you've just got to tick of the box miles. My headphones are in and I'm just ticking off, whether it's 5 miles, 6 miles or whatever it might be. It's the weekend that I look forward to the most, because I know that I'm going out on the trails, and it is hard, it's uncomfortable, it's it can be awful weather in the winter, it can be really hot in the summer, but you will find time out there to enjoy it, and I think that for people who say that they could never do that, just find some time and figure it out. If you want to do it, you will. We find time to waste on a whole bunch of other nonsense, don't we, right? Whether it's like watching 2 hours of TV or whatever it might be, we can find the time if we want to. Appreciate that it's more difficult for others with families and stuff, but I know people who do this and have to juggle a family, and they're out running at 5 a.m. and they're out doing night runs in the night. If you want it and you want to commit to it, you can find the time. But I'd recommend to anybody who has some sort of passion for running and hasn't necessarily crossed that line of doing an ultra yet, but has thought about it. Get one in you and get and pick one like a Pegasus event where there's no cut-off times, because at least you can go out there and experience it and go, all right, you either hated it and you'll never do it again, or you'll go, that was awful, but I absolutely loved it, which is pretty common.
Yeah.
You know, you can't finish these ultra marathons and be like, oh, that was just class. That was that wasn't hard. It's just not. Whether you're the first person or the last person, you will all have that. That was absolutely incredible. It was absolutely awful at the same time, and that's why you love it, right? Because it's the ultimate. For me, it's the ultimate test of what you can put your body through and your mind through, particularly in those longer races. Yeah.
Yeah. My dad's actually started running this year, and I'm keep trying to get him to sign up for an ultra. I'm like, please, Dad, just do it, because he doesn't like road running.
Okay.
But he lives in London,
Right.
so not a lot else to do there.
No.
So what he does do, because he loves going barefoot running as well. So what he'll do is he'll walk to the park. There's a park by his house, and he just does laps of the park barefoot. And I'm just like, that is, like, for me, that's probably tougher than just going out on a trail and going running.
Yeah, I'm going barefoot. See the chap from Caerphilly who does it with his ironing board. Yeah, have you not seen that?
I've not seen that.
Right, okay, I need to. I'll send you a link. You should absolutely speak to him. Yeah, he barefoot runner, and as the racing wise straps an ironing board to his back and his pack, and will race with that to raise money for charity. He did the Dragon 100 with an ironing board strapped to his back. You think running with a race pack for 100 miles is bad enough, and then you strap an ironing board to that.
I've got to meet this guy, and he's from round here.
Yeah, Caerphilly. Yeah, Caerphilly. I'll have to find the link, but his page. But he's absolutely absolutely inspirational. He did the Caerphilly 10K just recently with on barefoot with ironing board strapped to his back.
That's incredible. I've got to get him on the podcast.
Honestly, he does an awful lot. He does an awful lot for charity, an awful lot around mental health, but also just phenomenal. Gets out there and gets it done. And he'll say this thing where he's average, all of these things, but like you're running barefoot with a ironing board on your back. Scott Neal, that's his name. Yeah, phenomenal. An ironing board.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, because my dad loves that so much, I'm just like, please come to Wales, do an ultra with me. Try and get my mum along as well. Why not? Family day out on the trails.
It's such an amazing adventure, and I think that we use these terms races because it's ingrained in us, I guess, to a certain extent. So I do get that, but these are adventures and days out. You can't, Yes, it's a race in a form, and again, like I said, you to a certain extent you're racing it on your own terms as far as what you want to achieve from it, but you've also got to enjoy the moment. Don't necessarily let it slip by. I think where I think with the difference with road running is that again that there'll be people who absolutely soak up the atmosphere of the road races they go into, but if you are one of those that you are pace watching and clock watching and are racing, those races pass by. I remember one year doing the Cardiff half marathon, I think it was last year, where I'd taken it at short notice for a friend who couldn't race, so I went and did it, and you kind of finish it and go, I didn't enjoy any of that, because I was constantly watching, clock watching, pace watching, and it's over.
Yeah.
It's done. But like, you take something like WildHorse, and like where you are, where you're going, like the route you're on, the views that you're taking in, and the terrain, you just soak all of that up, and it's a it's an adventure. It has to be.
Yeah.
And enjoy it, because whether you do an ultra marathon, whether you do one and you're done, or whether you do more. But for me, it's about enjoying it all. Yeah, there are elements that you'll want to push yourself and race and stuff. That's all fine, but soak it all up, because it's an incredible experience.
Yeah. Okay, so the way I wrap all of my podcasts up is I get the guest to set a challenge for the listeners for the week. So what would your challenge for the listeners be this week?
My challenge for listeners would be this week is maybe take a second, take a step back and think about what you want to do and what you want to achieve that maybe you've thought of before that haven't. So it's always running orientated for me, unfortunately, or it could be going, it could even be stepping into the gym the first time. I think that actually is something for me that's probably more relative in terms of, if you've thought about, putting your trainers on and going for a run or going to the gym, but you're not sure about it, take that first step, because you may regret it, but you'll regret it more for not trying it, right? And there's this classic thing is, I'm not classed as a runner. If you put trainers on and you move one foot in front of the other quicker than walking, then you're a runner, right? So, and that can be whether it's road or trail. So for me, it's, take a moment and think about whether you've ever thought about doing something but stayed away from it and shied away from it, and do it, because you won't regret it.
Yeah, I can definitely back that up. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
No, thank you so much for having me.
You're more than welcome. And it was such a coincidence that you live down the road.
Exactly. So. Local, Caerphilly. I mean, there's no excuse now for you getting on those trails, because you have a fellow trail runner around the corner.
Yeah, I'll definitely be hitting you up for some sessions in the future. Where can people go online to follow you, your journey, see how you do in these 100 miles you've got coming up?
So people can find me on my very boring Instagram page, which is really just about it's about running and my cat, really, which is pretty sad. So yeah, they can find me on Instagram, and I'm Nathan Hutton, and you'll see a picture. My profile picture will be me on the Rossilli Gate, bracing myself at the end of the WildHorse race.
Amazing. Well, thanks again, and I can't wait to go for a run with you sometime.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Adventure Athletes podcast. If you want to find out more about our guests, check out the links in the description below, where you'll also find a link to our website, our socials, and my BigMoose fundraiser. Let us know in the comments who you want to hear from next, and we'll try and get them booked on as best we can. And if you want to get involved with anything Adventure Athletes, we've got so many things going on. We've got our programming that we'll do for people trying to take their next step into their own personal adventures. We'll do sports massage. We've got events that we're organising both online and in person, and we've got some different activity days based around getting you outdoors and learning something new. So if you want to get involved, check out the website. If you want to find out more about the guest, check out the links in the description, and let us know who you want on next.